Hello and welcome to the Mac Gamecast episode 61. I'm your host John Carr, and with me today is co-host Lily, not Casper. How you doing, Lily?
Hello, I'm doing well.
Fantastic. Glad to have you back on the show. It's been a while. You are, I think, a fan favorite because when you show up, the episode count goes up in the stats. So,
Well, I have to make my bi-yearly appearance to keep the numbers up and make sure I don't get fired.
Yeah. Yes. I'm secretly a corpo.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, we both are probably. So.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. But years. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you'd be more Miltech or something, but.
Well, Miltech is still a corpo.
That's true. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
In the Cyberpunk verse.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. It's past midnight in Denmark for Casper, so he's not here because he said, I think, quote, it's hard to do that and be a human at 6 a.m. to go to work or something. So
it's relatable.
Yeah, exactly. So he will not put in an appearance. Yeah, so this show is just going to be a deep dive Cyberpunk 2077 review. Of course, it's been out for a number of years on PC and console. Just hit Mac a couple days ago, basically. We covered the launch last episode, but we really talked almost exclusively about the launch and performance and so on. Not very little about the game itself. Performance is great. Will run great on any Mac that can run it, which is an M1 Pro or later. So just get the game if you have a suitable Mac and don't worry about it. It'll run great. So Cyberpunk 2077. Technically, there's the Ultimate Edition out with both the expansion and the core game, but if you go to Steam or GOG or Epic or whatever, you can just buy the core game and not the expansion. On the App Store, they bundle it and you're forced to buy both. I think you should buy both. I pre-ordered both at full price and I'm still happy with it. I mean, I think both of us have put around 100 hours into the game or something. Lots of hours. You can get a lot of time at this game. So, how did you get into Cyberpunk 2077 exactly? Because I know we talked about it 4 years ago or something excitedly over text, but that's sort of where my memory fades.
Yeah, so I have always been an RPG enjoyer, as you know. I think one of our first non-Call of Duty games that we bonded over was Mass Effect.
Yeah.
But I also like, text-based RPGs, and Cyberpunk has a text and dice-based... well, did I say text-based? I meant tabletop. Tabletop.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Text-based as in it has books and dice and everything. Yeah. My brain isn't working at 100% right now, but that's what I meant. But usually I would play D&D or Pathfinder or stuff like that, and I think it was in high school one day. I was a nerd. I did play some sports, so I'm not a total nerd. But I also had a nerd group, and we'd play tabletop RPGs after school once or twice a week. And, one year we decided to play the Cyberpunk. I think it was what was the
2020
original?
something.
2022 maybe.
Something like that, yeah.
No, it was 2020.
Yeah, it should be 2020.
It was 2020. And so we played a game about that. And I was a little interested in the universe a little more, and I started looking into, different kind of games that there might be, because I was also, exploring gaming at that time. I really started to game a lot in high school, and I think I found Shadowrun. I think it was
nice. Yep.
And I played a bit of Shadowrun, and I really liked it. Obviously, dated game.
Good game,
but it's still good. It's still good. I don't think games are bad just because they're old. I played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines last month.
Yeah.
And that game is 20 years old.
You're a better gamer than me because I think I've really hit a wall of old game bias. Even I know it's good, but I can't stand looking at it anymore, so I'm not playing it. But yeah. No, so you're listing off great games. I played them back in the day, and they were fantastic. The Shadowrun series and Vampire the Masquerade, and yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, well, but Shadowrun is actually how I learned about Cyberpunk 2077 later on.
Nice.
Because I think the first trailer for Cyberpunk 2077 was
2013. Yeah.
20. Was it 2013 or
Yep.
was it?
Yep.
Oh
The game released
God,
7 years after the first trailer.
you're right. You're right. So it had already been out when I was getting into Shadowrun. I remember that. So that's where I first heard about it.
Yeah,
and
the
then
lady
and
in the
then
street with the mantis blades and stuff.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Who later shows up in Cyberpunk 2077. But I think I forgot about it. Like I just brain dumped it.
Right.
You know, I had a lot going on in life. I joined the army. I went to college. I did a bunch of stuff in that time period, and then 2019 came along, and then they announced like, "Hey, look, it's actually a game now. It's real." and then I got back into it, and so
Nice. Nice.
that's how I ended up buying it on release. Actually,
Nice.
and I was one of the lucky few that could play it on release, and I didn't have a buggy experience somehow.
Yeah, we can hop into that. I mean, my path is similar. I was following it. CD Projekt, I've been following them since like Witcher 1 2007 days, quite closely. Witcher 2, well, obviously later Witcher 3, which came out 2 years after the 2013 Cyberpunk trailer. And I had, Cyberpunk kind of wish listed forever, always reading any little news article or scrap I could about it. So, of course, as soon as it was announced for pre-order, I, smashed that pre-order button like immediately, and then was just waiting around. No, it ran well for me. I was running it in boot camp at the time on my iMac. There wasn't any. No, I didn't have a lot of bugs, but the game was definitely less than what was promised, and that I could tell. So I distinctly remember telling my buddy, who I'd mentioned before the show when we were talking, this is both the best and worst game I've ever played. Like, I couldn't get it out of my head. I was constantly thinking about it, both with like love and frustration. So I played it for like, I don't know, 10 or 12 hours, and then I put it down. I'm like, I know they're going to patch it later on. I didn't know how much. I mean, they're still patching it up until like today, a few days ago. I wasn't expecting that much patching, but I'm like, I know the devs, I know the company, I know they can make a great game. I think it's a good game, but it's clearly not the great game that they said, that they meant to make up, that they said they would deliver up front. So I always had a backlog. I had so many other things to play anyway. So I just put it down and really just kind of peeked at it like every 3 to 6 months. Okay, what's been updated, jump around a little more. And, so I played it on and off. And of course, I essentially, once I heard they were remaking it, like, not remaking is the wrong word, like heavily updating it with the 2.0 patch or 2.1 or something. I was like, okay, I'll just wait till that's out. Then I'll finish my playthrough. So I was in limbo with the game a while, but always like dipping my toes in and out. Always watching the subreddit and reading about it and blah, blah, blah. I got into like listening about, people's RPG adventures on like various podcasts. I went and found like, they record their D&D session. So I found some Cyberpunk Red shows and listened to them. And, I just sort of kept my toes in the world of Cyberpunk around the edges. But the game's out for Mac. It's here. So, I was thinking, what kind of game is Cyberpunk? Well, in a nutshell, it's an open world or mostly open world action, like adventure RPG set in the year 2077. Cyberpunk by definition is high tech, low life is, I believe, the default sort of descriptor to it. Everything's very advanced technologically, but the average life tends to be like really dingy and grungy and maybe violent or short or crime ridden or whatever. And it's really only like the really rich people who are, living it up, and not having a terrible existence. And even then, they're always getting backstabbed and one-upped and ladder climbing and all the whole corpo world. So, I've always been fascinated with the world. The genre has always been my favorite style of game, even going back like to the 90s from like the early Deus Ex games and stuff. They're also considered cyberpunk, a different version of it, but they're like in that genre. A lot of body modifications, transhumanism, augmenting yourself. And of course, Cyberpunk's all about that. But
it's funny you mentioned Deus Ex because I remember you talking to me about that game way back when, like 2013.
Yeah,
and I still haven't played it. I am sacrilegious, I'm guessing, that I.
Yeah, that back then that would have been Human Revolution or Mankind. I think I don't think Mankind
I think
Divided
it
was
was
out
Human
yet.
Revolution you were talking
Yeah,
to me
Human
about.
Revolution.
Yeah.
Still really good. Still really good in my opinion. They also did like a director's cut, which updated some stuff later. So I think it's
And
still pretty
I
solid.
remember
Yeah.
because I asked you about your profile picture,
Yeah,
and you
still
started telling
using
me
it
about that
today.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, still using it today. Little old Adam uh,
And
Jensen.
something you mentioned that just like reminded me of something. You mentioned how you were interested in it because you were following CD Projekt Red. So I guess we had two different paths that got us into interest in the game. But it's funny because I am terrible at following game producers.
Uh,
Like I don't know why. I just like it'll be in an article. I'll read the article and be like, "Oh, cool, they made this too," and then I'll forget about it 5 seconds later.
right, right,
So it honestly didn't occur to me at first. I like, oh wait, these are the same people who made The Witcher.
right. Because
And
you're a Witcher fangirl. You're
yes,
Sirius Bay and all that stuff.
Fury
So
is one of my favorite characters of all time, and I
she's
will
great.
not hear otherwise.
Well, Witcher
And I'm
4
so excited for
stars
Witcher 4. I'm
her. Yeah,
so
looks
excited.
amazing. And you get Kelpie. Yay. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that actually, quite a lot myself as well. So, Witcher 4 is coming sooner than Cyberpunk 2, which is already announced. It's not a spoiler. So,
Yep.
um, yeah, I think there was a lot of fan theories, just like going off that Siri, I think was like maybe an Easter egg somewhere in the game. Um, I think you might be able to find some references about some world hopping person or something, but I don't really remember at this point. Um, because I think in one of the books it describes her going to some as what's essentially a modern world with like flying cars and stuff. Because but it's very short descriptor, and then she's like on to the next world where it's back to elves or whatever the heck.
Yeah, I think there was also oh, I remember my favorite one. One of the arcade games is Roach Race, and
Yes,
you're
yes,
and
yes.
you're controlling Roach.
There you go. Yeah, so
There
it's a
were a few.
very ambitious game. I do think at this point, with all the work put into it, it is one of the best games around. I would say ever made. It's not just a matter of patching the game. They actually have to have a vision and execute it. And it still has a couple rough edges. It is a 5-year-old game after all, and I see rough as in like occasionally you can find something that might be a little clunky or a little lacking, but overall the game's pretty expansive. Speaking of, you said you came from an RPG background, and we're still in this sort of like what is Cyberpunk 2077 sort of framework. Um, so people say you just came off hot of Baldur's Gate 3 or something.
Mhm.
That's also an RPG, but it's it's a CRPG, so you can't expect the same type of RPG. Say systems. Cyberpunk has a lot of RPG systems, but they're more based in a shooter framework. That it is very story heavy. There is a lot of story choices you can make with very different outcomes. We'll get into more of those later. But most of like you options, since you do in fact play a preset character named V, either male or female, you have sort of you can of course choose your background a bit, corpo nomad and what the heck, street kid. But you still have a lot of fixed elements about you. You're not making a brand new from scratch ground up, I make whatever I want with my character sort of thing you might do in say D&D tabletop or even a D&D video game. So there is a certain amount of fixed elements to your character. You can shape your character a reasonable amount, but also not as much as you might expect. I had a friend complain about that to me, coming from a heavy D&D background. He's like, I love to make super custom characters with all my own lore. And it's like, well, yeah, he was like, Cyberpunk's cool, but I couldn't like do as much as I wanted. So I'm just throwing that out there. You can do a lot. There's a lot of combat builds. There's lots of exploration. There's tons of quests and different outcomes. But, nonetheless, it has its limitations from a D&D point of view or an RPG point of view. I just wanted to sort of preface that for anyone unfamiliar. That's all.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the biggest thing with that though is like all video games inherently have a shortcoming when it comes to character creation.
Right.
Even Baldur's Gate 3, right? Like you you all start at the same place. You're no matter what, you got picked up in Baldur's Gate and you ended up on a nautiloid, and
Right.
the game doesn't really touch on your background. I guess the difference between Baldur's Gate 3 and Cyberpunk is that Baldur's Gate 3, by not touching too much on the background, lets you imagine more
Right.
about your background. But Cyberpunk, I would say, at least for me personally, because I like imagining those things about my character, I like maybe even like writing something or putting myself in my character's shoes and saying, hey, how would my character for this playthrough that I am doing, how would they react in this situation?
Yeah.
Um, you just got to brainstorm. You just got to be creative with it. Because you have those three life paths, but there's a lot of flexibility within those life paths. Because again, you don't have very much established in your character before the game starts.
Yeah, you get like a maybe 15 or maybe max 20-minute sort of little prelude, prequel playthrough thing, depending on your life path. Corpo, and surprisingly, you're in some corporate offices, some shenanigans go on. You fly around in a super fancy car. Nomad, you're out there in the Badlands in some dusty garage. And Street Kid, I actually never did, so I'm not sure actually where I assume you start in the
You
streets.
start in the streets. I think it's like I forget. I only did one Street Kid playthrough, and that was a while ago.
Right.
I think you're in some kind of carjacking ring or something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
I believe that's correct.
there's some kind of like you go steal a car mission.
Right. Yeah, but nonetheless, that's mostly flavor. All roads lead to Rome or Night City or whatever you want to call it. You can't like wildly change the beginning of the game. You just play through your little unique thing, and then it basically dumps you in a very fixed set of circumstances. Jackie's your buddy. It takes you on this montage, which is a cool montage, but part of you is like, hey, could we have played some of this maybe in a different, I said that's one of those sort of like clunky remnants of either the game kind of coming out a little early or maybe just, was beyond the scope of their vision, whatever. Yeah, you get this montage of you going on all these adventures and getting money and getting an apartment and making friends and shooting people. And it's like, okay, it's cool, but, like, could we have played some of that? Probably, but, maybe that'll be Cyberpunk 2. Yeah, so the game basically just, you start properly in your apartment, which is a pretty cool apartment. And, of course, you can upgrade it over the course of the game as usual. It's not quite like GTA level, but, I mean, it depends how many mods you install as well. It's a lot of apartment mods. I only got a couple of them, some cool UI things. But yeah, and then as usual, what I do like about the game compared to some RPGs is the game doesn't hold your hand per se. I mean, you can, turn on or off various like extra tips or UI, HUD features. But it does a good job of nudging you, in my opinion, towards like good content. Like some of the game's most interesting quests happen in and around actually your mega block, so like side quests. I'm talking about it specifically, like the sentient vending machine or the Edge Runners side quest. They're not just in your face. You have to find them or like observe them, but the game puts things in your path usually without being like too obvious. And I'm talking side quest content, not main story content. That every game obviously funnels you more or less, to the main story. Like, ta-da, here's the quest point with the main story, go do it, Every game does that, basically. But yeah, definitely rewards you for exploring, but there's usually not stuff so hidden and obscure that, only 1% of players will see this really cool quest or something. I don't know, Dark Souls style.
Oh, I agree. And I think when we talk about that more later on, I have thoughts about that.
Right, for sure. But yeah, might as well hop in. Again, the first part of the game, the game's interesting. And again, this is where I have a criticism or two. There's sort of two things happen early on that might tweak your expectations for either the story or the gameplay. The first one is the proper mission you go on, which is actually really well done for a tutorial. You have to go and rescue this person in an apartment building who's under siege. It's, Night City. Everyone's always fighting all the time. People are always getting kidnapped. People are getting hijacked. Gangs are fighting. Someone's always in trouble somewhere. And you as a mercenary, are basically hired, a Jackie to go rescue this person. And you have to fight your way through a gang and pick them up. This is the tutorial, so it's not much of a spoiler. And, are they alive or not? I won't say that. But then Trauma Team shows up. It's really cool. The scripted moment. Trauma Team's fun. And it's a simple quest, but it's like pretty smoothly integrated and well done. And sort of the slight issue is, and this happens later with the pre-heist quest where you get the bot. It's again a very highly variable, lots of NPC interaction, like quest like this. It's like this little sandbox quest. And the problem is a lot of the other game isn't designed that way. So I'm not going to say it's false advertising, but it gives you a few early on impressions that when you play later don't necessarily meet the same standards. It's not that the game isn't fun or interesting, or there's not more than one way to do a mission or something, but there's a few sort of highlight missions early on that like put in an extra effort to kind of make a good impression. And they do make a really good impression. You're like, wow, this is really cool. But the whole game isn't like that. To be fair, when we talk about the expansion Phantom Liberty, they basically bring that ethos back, and kind of every piece of content is much more expanded and impressive. So there is that. But yeah. So gameplay wise, like RPG, what can you expect? Because you have different things in this genre, right? You have like Mass Effect 1, which was actually an RPG in the guise of a shooter, and the first Deus Ex, the original one, was like that as well. Like you had accuracy stats and you could miss a lot, and you had all these like more RPG style like randomized statistics going on. And then you say you had Mass Effect 2, which turned into like a pure shooter, basically, from the combat point of view anyway, not the story point of view. So yeah, Cyberpunk's more like that. It is an action shooter game. It's more reliant on your skills, but of course, it's in the name Cyberpunk. It's all about most people in your position and in the world. They're always chasing upgraded hardware, better parts, arms, legs, eyes, brains, guns, weapons, efficiency systems, bones, whatever the heck. There's so many things. So that's where like more of the RPG character aspect comes in. You are V, and of course male or female V. Both voice actors are great. I like them both. And people seem to lean towards female V voice actress. She's amazing, but I like both of them equally personally and played a run of each. Yeah, you do get a free reset of your stats because the game is relatively complex in terms of your character builds, because of course you have your guns, your items, your clothing. Well, they fix that. It's not your armor anymore. But then of course you have your primary stats, and then you have your perk trees, and then you have your cyberware, and all of this can be like upgraded and mixed and matched in various ways. And if you're not at all familiar with RPGs, it might be a little overwhelming, but if you have RPG experience from either the tabletop or other RPG games, you'll probably be fine. Just takes a little time to poke around, read the tooltips, understand, what's going on, and then you're probably fine. What are your thoughts on the, I don't know, cyberware and this and that? You had a comment pre-show about how maybe you didn't really pay too much attention to it up front.
Yeah, I was just taking a second to think about my thoughts.
Sorry about that.
I think comparing it to Mass Effect 2 is pretty apt. I mean, if anything, it's how should I say it? It's like Mass Effect 2 in that you don't have a penalty to using something. Like your baseline is established. You can get really good at certain things. Like if you go a melee build or a hacker build or a close in brawler build or a long range sniper build, then you'll be very good with specific weapons over others. But if you're a melee build and then you pick up a really good sniper, you'll still one shot people with the sniper. It's not like Mass Effect 1 where if you don't have points invested in sniper, your area to hit is enormous. And even if you scope in, your aim is like all over the place, and
it's like I'm getting seasick.
So it's it's in some ways like Mass Effect 2, but you can get a lot more focused.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And I didn't realize the first time I played just how focused you could get. The first time I played, I didn't want to go too crazy, so I didn't really put a lot of thought into things like cyberware,
Right.
and and also the first time I played, your clothes were your armor. So,
Yeah.
clothing versus armor wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah.
Um, and even now, clothing is cosmetic. So your
Yeah.
armor really was a thing, but I didn't realize how much you could do with customizations for your weapons, for your armor, um, or how much you could do with upgrades and cyberware and everything. I didn't realize, for example, that every cyberware shop has different
Yeah.
pieces of technology they sell.
Sneaky,
So
sneaky.
yeah, so because I was really used to the standard RPG where, you know, if I go to a shop and it's a if it's a general store and it's selling this kind of food, or this kind of thing that buffs you, insert item here, I was like, oh well, this is the same thing that I'll find at another shop for the most part. Maybe a
Yeah.
couple extra goodies here and there, but not like a completely different stock, right? Like if I go to a general goods store or an armor store or whatever, I expect to mostly find the same items, just maybe with different stats or with a little bit different stuff here and there. The
Right.
cyberware shops sell completely different stuff. Like, I didn't know you could buy mantis blades from a specific vendor that I had never been to before because it was kind of out of the way.
Yeah.
Um, and so I actually, the first time I found mantis blades and I ended up falling in love with the mantis blade build was, I think, on a cyber psycho that I had killed.
Nice.
Um, I think that was the quest. Yeah, that was
Probably.
it. It was one cyber psycho that kind of blinks around and he killed a bunch of tiger claws. But um, so yeah, so that's the first time I found it, and then later on, I ended up buying a really good pair from like 3 playthroughs later. I was like, oh wow, this guy's just selling a really good one. Like, I could have just bought it the whole time. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I think the level of flexibility that you're going to find in what kind of builds you can take can be a bit overwhelming. But once you find like A, your niche, and B, like how to make that work, every build can be overpowered.
Yeah.
Like, you have cyberware that can just make people kill themselves and then it'll chain to other people. Or like contagion plus chain.
I think it's contagion plus suicide or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's just like now you cast one, you basically cast one spell, right? You run one quick hack and you just knocked out half of the enemy force right there.
Yeah.
Or melee or throwing knife builds. I've seen throwing knife builds where you can essentially one shot someone with a throwing knife.
I dipped
Most
into that a
enemies.
little bit. It was highly entertaining. There's an
It is.
icon.
It's just fun.
There's an iconic like electrical axe. I think maybe it's from Phantom Liberty. It has a chance to like return to you after you've thrown it. So it's
Yep.
really some you can just
Yep.
bam throw it at people sometimes. Yeah, I would say offhand the biggest divergence in the combat systems is whether you're going Netrunner or you're going not Netrunner, essentially. That
Pretty
it's not
much,
that
yeah.
granular, but that's like the bigger strokes. It's true if you say exclude Netrunner, and you can mix and match to some degrees. I'll get into that in a moment, but you can more or less mostly pure Netrunner with some light gun support. But if you go into guns, you have to like go into guns, or you can go into melee. There's pretty good melee builds, especially in the later updates that got super good. But typically, you're going to mix and match some. Like, say you're like a brawly melee person with gorilla arms, well, you're probably going to also whip out a shotgun too and snipe some people, or maybe even you have a sniper to shoot someone way up on a ledge or some nonsense.
Mm.
Or maybe you have lynx paws to run up there and pull them off, or you throw someone else's dead corpse at them and kill them. There's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
But the reason I say the Netrunner thing is because you only have, I forget the slot in your body, but it can hold either a rig for hacking and net running, or It can hold a basically other stuff like a Sandevistan, aka the Sandy, the famous thing you see from Edge Runners and David uses. Or it can hold a Berserk something or the other mod for like melee craziness. And unless you install, a mod from Nexus Mods to give you more slots, you have to pick and choose which one you wear, and you can't just switch them out whenever you want. Like all your cyberware, you have to go to a Ripper Doc and pay them to change it. I think maybe you don't have to pay them just to change it, but in general, you have to go to a Ripper Doc. You can't just, open your inventory and all right, I'm in the middle of this fight. I'm going to switch out my rig and install the Sandy and yada, yada, yada. You can't do that. So
can't do surgery on yourself in the middle of a firefight.
No, you cannot. So you're not locked into your build per se, but to an extent you are. Depending.
And I think it's really interesting because you have an interesting balance of like fun versus breaking the game.
Yeah.
And everyone has their own preference with this, right? Like me personally, I don't take much enjoyment out of just beating the game. Like I like to give myself a challenge and experiment and try different things and mix and match. But some people just want to say like, hey, I took the game up on the hardest difficulty. I found the best build and I beat it, and that's cool too. And having the ability to mix and match and do all that stuff, that's something that this game provides that a lot of other games don't really provide the same level of customization and flexibility. And it forces you down some paths in some ways, like we talked about with the starting of the story. But in terms of how you build your character, you really have the freedom. Like you have attributes you can put points into that you can choose freely. And those do have an effect on the story as well. But mostly it affects combat. Like you might get some dialogue here and there. You might get a door you may or may not be able to unlock with a certain skill that you have or some points that you have. But really it lets you focus on your combat and how you go around and do things. And beyond that, you have like traits and perks you get within each tree. And then obviously, like we talked about, the equipment and the cyberware. So there's a lot you can do. You can break the game or you can just have fun.
Yeah, it's well said. There's a surprising amount of customization, and I mentioned my buddy. Yeah, he played for ages. I think to level 20 or something without like the only thing he did was pick up new guns. I don't even think he leveled his points, but I think, maybe he did that. But yeah, I don't think he noticed. Yeah, you can click on say body or technical. Like if you have high enough body, you can rip open doors. High enough technical, you can override locks. That's like a passive sort of perk. It unlocks certain conversation options and maybe quest outcomes, but more on the minor side. But yeah, as you said, the majority of the game is in fact around combat. But and the combat's pretty fun. I would say it's fun up front, and of course, as with a typical RPG game, the more you level up, well, the more fun it gets because you get more options. And then once you accrue enough points, you can start that mix and match or experimentation. The games you can redo your perk points for free, which is nice. You can't reset your stat points, which is like your body, your technical, your cool. Maybe they give you a one-time reset. At least they did in a patch update. I don't know if you start a new game if they give it to you. But in any case, max level is 50 in the core game, 60 in the expansion. So you can basically max out 3 stats fully in the expansion. And then, a smattering of others. So you can, mix and match your build still quite a lot, even without adjusting your like physical stat points. I wanted to comment on net running because even though net running has a lot of combat application, it has a lot of stealth and like general sneakiness or even exploration application in the game as well. If you're more interested in a pacifist playthrough or a sneaky stealthy playthrough, the game isn't a stealth game, but it does make an attempt to cater like to some stealthy builds and stuff. And if you want to do that, net running's the way to go because you can do things like turn off cameras and, make machines malfunction as distractions or, use a quick hack to make someone, if they have cyberware in their eyes to make them go blind. Like there's like a short, brief invisibility mod thingamajig that also goes in with all of that. So if you want to like still do combat, but also maybe just do more exploration / sneaky stuff, net running is also the way to go because you can, load up your quick hacks with, all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, and I think on the note of stealth and things like that, I think the biggest thing as like for me as far as that option goes is that it's just another layer of options that gives you different ways to play the game and gives you different choices that you can make. Like realistically, there are some quests in this game that you can complete without like getting into a fight, without killing a single person.
Yeah.
Like if you want to do a pacifist, like I've seen YouTube videos of like pacifist playthrough where it's like the only people I'm going to fight are the people I'm forced to fight, and
Right.
like they get like surprisingly far in some of these quests without making a noise. Um,
Right.
and it's again, it's just one of those like nice to have things. Like you don't need to have that in a game to have it to be good, but it's nice to have that. And when they include that as an option, that's just another sign of like, okay, they thought about some things that the players might do and they put it in. They took the time and effort to make that accessible instead of just making it a barrier.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of forced combat in the game, but there's a surprising amount that you can avoid engaging with if you want to as well. And if you want to, you can turn around every corner and find some ganger and just like start a firefight or whatever, basically. As with all of these kinds of open worldy games, you can run around and like kill civilians or cause havoc and get the police to chase you, but it's mostly a lost cause because eventually max tax shows up, and unless you're incredibly high level, they will just stomp your face in. Um, you have to be like
Yep.
you have to be like end game build basically to take on max tack. And it's kind of a fun thing to do, but it is actually infinite. You can't get them to like go away. So the police system is pretty good in the game now. It used to be terrible. They would just spawn out of thin air for no reason at the slightest thing in the early days. So all that's been
I
fixed.
remember that.
Yeah, it was a real riot. So I just, Cyberpunk's an interesting game. It does cater to quite a lot of people. And after playing it for a while, mostly in that sort of like, because I was playing like a brawler, shotgun, close range SMG build. So I was just always, kicking in the front door, basically. Occasionally I would do something sneaky, but not that often. And I realized as the game went on, I'm more that like I wasn't really looking for a challenge from the combat system. I was more into like the power fantasy of it. But really what I enjoy about Cyberpunk in general, and especially Cyberpunk 2077, is the world building, the lore, the backstories, the detail they've put into, all the gangs and Night City and the different factions and corpos and, how do vehicles work and how do food work and, what are eddies and what's the vernacular and, the why of things is very well explained in the world with, it's well done within the game itself visually, but in terms of, hearing things on the radio, news articles, books you can find, quest descriptions, all this, like all the stuff of the world, the background of different gun manufacturers and cyberware. It's all like just really well done and engrossing. And I love those kinds of details. And I personally think the kind of game it isn't like, it's not well designed for like if you're a hardcore FPS shooter player who maybe plays Counter-Strike or Call of Duty competitively. Like, you don't come to Cyberpunk for like a hardcore action shooter challenge. You can make the game hard. You really have to mod it to make it like really hard, honestly. At least like if you consider yourself a good FPS player. So for me, what I found like more enjoyment out of actually as the game went on, and I only really discovered this later because I stopped fast traveling at my buddy's suggestion. I fast traveled everywhere because I was always like, well, there's so much to do and I want to do every single side quest possible and blah, 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 blah. But then I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm just going to start driving around everywhere instead. And I actually, the game, it takes longer to play because, you have to get to your destination sometimes a few minutes away or 5 minutes away. But I really enjoyed the game more. I suddenly started noticing all kinds of details in the world I never did because I was always zipping by it. Really cool architecture, buildings, parks, some oddball old monk on a bench who like takes you into some mysterious, mystic VR quest thing. It's all very weird. You'll encounter, parents taking photos of their kid on the side of the road. You'll encounter really interesting conversations two people are having, and they don't loop. It goes on for like 2 or 3 minutes. You know, um, you can discover really beautiful scenes, and of course, there's a full day-night cycle and a dynamic weather system, and and the game's never really more pretty, like, and more engrossing to me. Yeah, I'm cruising around with like a banging track on the radio because the radio is baller in this game.
It's fire for sure.
Yeah, I still listen to the radio now, like years later, most of the tracks. So, and of course, they added the radio, so now you can play the radio even walking around in some of the newer updates. You don't have to be in a vehicle. I think they called it the radio port or something. Yeah, so or just walking instead of driving around as well. But of course, occasionally I'm getting into fights or doing a quest or discovering something new or whatever. But just like really soaking in the world, especially like balancing that with like a ton of combat or questing. Really, really compelling, at least for me. I just really enjoy the atmosphere of the game. I think it's well done if you take the time to go look for it. Off the beaten path a little bit, discover a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to touch on after you talked about that earlier. Like how if you just walk around, you'll find a bunch of side quests. The game does such a good job of just setting up the world, and it really rewards you for paying attention to things like that. And sometimes, yeah, if you stop and listen to a conversation, it's just a conversation. And it's still cool for like someone like me or you who might be like actually, find getting immersed into a world like that to be really cool. But sometimes you will find a side quest just by listening to people. Like, I think one of the earliest side quests you can get is if you go downstairs from your starting apartment and you'll hear like two NCPD officers like talking to their friend through the door.
Yeah.
And then like you can get a side quest from that just by like stopping and kind of listening and paying attention. Or like you said, like the little environmental things that stand out a bit. And if you actually notice that and then go over and investigate, like you'll get the weird VR quest or the talking vending machine or the fortune teller booth. I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
Like there are so many cool side quests that are just out there in the world that aren't tied to characters. And there are plenty of side quests that are tied to characters as well. There's some that are tied to characters whose sole purpose are giving you missions.
Right.
The what was the term for them? It was like
the fixers.
The fixers. That's it. The fixers will give you quests. They'll give you
gigs.
Very
technical term, but yeah,
gigs that are very controlled and generally they're kind of contained within themselves. And there are some other characters that'll give you full quest lines, like, if you encounter some of the actual named characters throughout the storyline, Judy or Rivers or the other. I mean, there are loads of characters. Panem, she has her own quest line. Like there are so many quest lines you can do through the other characters as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in there really quick on that and mention that the game puts in your way like these major NPCs, like they're part of like main story quest, and you can see them once or twice or maybe thrice and then forget about them if you want, or you can spend more time with them and open up a whole ton of new stuff, all sorts of extra side quests, or maybe romance options, or just extra cool things, interesting things. Some of them are like detective missions, and some of them are like undersea explorations, and some of them are car fights, and some of them are just like hanging out on a roof talking, looking at the stars, just like all this varied stuff that the game, like I said, like you were saying, the game introduces you, but it's really up to you. How much do I want to engage with this person? Are they cool? Are they interesting? Do they look fun? Do I want to go check that out? The game does a really good job at that.
And the other thing that you were talking about, like the world building and how like you can hear people talking on the side of the road and stuff. the details that are put into this game, and maybe it's just me, maybe I'm like going a little too, too deep into the weeds here, but like there is a story around your character, just going through the city. um I think one thing that stood out to me is how the city has a purpose behind it. um the whole theory of like Chekhov's gun. If something's shown on screen, there's actually a meaning to it.
Right.
That and this was something that just kind of stood out to me as I was walking around, um just kind of seeing where I could go in the city. Like even things like trash and garbage are accumulated in places that make sense.
Yeah.
It's not just set dressing. It fits in with the larger picture. And I think even way out in the Badlands, like when you go outside of the city where all the nomads are, even out there, like you will find like under a bridge, there's like a bunch of people have chucked trash bags into a specific spot because it's a logical spot to stop and say, I'm littering. Where am I going to litter that is not going to be seen? I'll chuck it off this bridge. And there's just a pile underneath this bridge. And one thing that also stood out to me, and maybe it's just because I married a geologist, so I start thinking about stuff like this. But the watershed and the way the like erosion is designed, like it makes sense. Like
Oh, cool.
it feels like, I know I'm digging into the weeds with this one, but it makes sense. And there's this one quest you go on with Judy where you explore an underwater drowned city.
Yeah.
Um, because they dammed up a river and the water that had been redistributed, flooded this area. And if you actually follow, like if you go overland and you follow that water source, again, it tracks. Like if you did this in the real world, this is what would happen. Um, I just thought when these little details started popping out to me, I was just like, okay, someone or some team up in the developers, like whatever office buildings, whatever, they put a lot of thought into how they built the city. Like they really tried to make it make sense. Um, and that's something I feel that maybe they learned from Witcher 3,
Mm.
because one sense that I got when I was playing Witcher 3, and this is a complaint that I've heard before, is that the cities felt very cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Like there really wasn't a lot of thought into why a building is there or why this market is here. It's there because it needs to be there. It's there because it's set dressing.
Yep.
Whereas in Night City, things are there because it makes sense for it to be there. And sometimes that's not conducive to what the player might be doing. Um, there are some shops that are nowhere near any of the major quest lines. There are some buildings that have things in them that you have to go out of your way to find because it's not presented to you. And some people might see that as a downside, and they might think like, oh, this is just going way too deep into the weeds. And if there's something interesting, I want it presented to me. I want it to be, um, along my path. Um, and there still is plenty. Like no matter where you go in Night City, you're going to see something interesting. But
Yeah.
I think the fact that they took those extra steps and that's there if you look for it, that's really telling of like how much passion they put into this.
No, it bears mentioning because a lot of games that are open world or even semi-open world, and I think Cyberpunk claims itself to be open world, and it is, but in my opinion, it's really more semi-open world. But either way, these games tend to have a lot of filler, copy-paste areas that are like inorganic or inauthentic, maybe, and you notice them immediately. You're like, oh, great, I'm in one of the, like, okay, like you don't want to explore, you don't want to spend any time there, you just move on to some more interesting spot. And you hit the nail on the head when with everything you were just saying, and I agree with you. There's a lot of life to the city, just even if you're just going around and poking your nose, or yeah, you're on some like oddball side quest with just one character in the middle of nowhere. A lot of things are organic, authentic. They make more sense. They make I think sense subconsciously. I'm sure somewhere people could find, here's this moment where the game pulls you out of the game by being a gamey game thing. I can't think of that ever really happening often to me, or I can't even think of an example, but I'm sure somebody could somewhere. But the game definitely goes out of its way, not only on a surface level, but a deep dive level, for all the reasons you just explained, to give you that experience. Even if you just coast through the game, you'll have a great time. And you'll also have a really great time if you're the kind of player who wants to dig down. Like, they really do cater to everyone. They give you, the main quest spectacle and the set pieces and the cool missions and the things and the rewards. But there's all these other layers to the game that are, I wouldn't, not even off the beaten path, but they're just out there. you know just go look. And I do really agree, the main takeaway is, like, there's something interesting everywhere you look, and there really is. So I do love that about the game. You're really never bored, or you feel like unsatisfied or unrewarded. There's always something interesting going on, and sometimes something really funny, or sometimes something really tragic, or and that's really, like, what Cyberpunk is about. They say there's no happy endings in Night City, and that's largely true. But, like, part of the beauty is everyone struggling to get there, and sometimes some people do, or sometimes you can help someone, like, succeed or not fail or not be miserable or not die or not be sabotaged, or maybe help their relationship. And there's really quest for love on, like, kind of the whole scale of human existence in the game. And it's not some deep philosophical game, but it really has its moments. And I think it does a good job of embodying, the gaminess of Cyberpunk, but also, of that world. And it's not like the character, you, the player, can choose to be like, well, I'm, goody two shoes, or I'm like evil villain person. Most people in the world really are like shades of gray. There's very few outright like evil people that you meet, and there's very few like outright good people that you meet. It might be like Misty and Vincent or something. Like, it's like there's that are like, oh, these people are just really good all around, wholesome, like, people. Your Ripper Doc Vic, I think his name's Vincent, maybe it's just Vic.
Yeah.
Victor, not Vincent, sorry. And then Misty, Jackie's girlfriend, she's like pretty sweet. Like, even V is pretty self-serving, honestly. You can choose to be less selfish in a lot of cases, but, like, you're a mercenary for hire. You do a lot of shady stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and most of the game is spent in that slow burn of trying to not die.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you're trying to not die, a lot of the other priorities go out the window.
Absolutely. Yeah, small story complaint. Early on, this whole thing happens. You get some cyberware in your head, for trying to not spoil everything, and basically it's like kind of killing you. And my nitpick here is, your doctor goes, "Oh, you have like 2 weeks to live." It's like, you shouldn't have said that, because I'm going to be spending months and months doing side quests. Like, it's like a small thing, but a lot of games do it, obviously. The old Skyrim, the world is ending. Okay, I'll come back to you in like 100 years when I'm done everything.
Yeah, Hanako's still waiting for you at Embers.
Yes, exactly. So, I wish they should have at least said 2 months. They should have just said a year. They should have just said, "Hey, it's killing you soon. We don't know exactly when, but it's urgent." But they literally go, "It's in 2 weeks. You're going to drop dead." It's like, dude, that's just too short. It's kind of a rookie writing mistake. It doesn't really pop up again in the story, but I didn't like it personally.
I think the in-universe explanation can easily be like, Vic just really didn't know what he was talking about. Because it's not like they've had...
It is a new tech.
It's not like they've had something like this happen before.
You're right. That's...
And I think also, I'm not sure if it was one of the game devs or if it was one of the story writers, but I remember reading somewhere that another reason why, like, it initially looked like 2 weeks, but then your character keeps going and going.
Yeah,
it's because initially, spoiler alert, if we want to put that up now, Johnny Silverhand, like, his engram initially, when he merges with you, with your mind or whatever, right? Like, when you die and he starts to take over your body and your mind and everything, it was like a gut reaction of, like, he's flooding into your system.
Right.
And so they're going over the data that you get from that, and it's like, oh, they went from 0 to 30% in a day, or in 3 days or whatever. So by that
Right. Right.
timeline, that's 2 weeks. So,
Fair. Fair. And then as you work
but
with
then,
Johnny and everything,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, it slows
Johnny
down.
makes like concessions very early on of like, I'm not going to take over your body. I'm not going to, hostile takeover and take this from you. We'll try and figure out a solution together. And if you have a good relation with Johnny and you keep building that throughout the game, um, that's even further justification for like, okay, your two halves per se are in harmony, so there's not as much of like active death going on. It's more of a
Yeah.
passive.
Yeah. Let's talk about Johnny. We won't, I think anyone who's peeked at the game, you see him all over. You've seen you've seen him in, you've seen him in promotional materials and clips and posters and trailers. He's even shown up at some, live shows and the what was it, the
Mm-hmm.
"You're Beautiful" moment or whatever he
Yeah.
had there. Um, we won't spoil how he gets in your head, but he does get in your head. And yeah, Johnny Silverhand, he's a huge part of the game because he doesn't just pop up like for main quest. He is everywhere, like almost all the time, but not exclusively all the time. He will show up riding in your vehicle. He will show up hanging out on a noodle bench. He will show up as you're looking at a record store. He will show up not in like a middle of a firefight, but in like a lot of exploration, a lot of quests, even a lot of side quests. He will actually have a particular opinion and urge you to like solve it in this way, maybe to save someone or to help someone or to kill them or whatever. And if you don't do what he wants, he actually gets pissed off and sometimes he disappears for a while. I don't
Yep.
think the game's like, he's not like a literal AI in the game who's like dynamic enough to track the player behavior or something, but they script it so well, it's quite convincing. And sometimes he just shows up to admire some scenery and make some comments. And, he's kind of a bastard. He's kind of a dick. He's crude. He's rough, but he also has a lot of sharp observations about like V and humanity and corpos and people and the world. And he has a pretty wicked sense of humor. So for me, he really grew on me personally. And of course, yeah, I like Keanu Reeves, so that helps. But even if you don't, I think he's a fascinating character where, yeah, you start off with this awkward, kind of hostile relationship, and it is actually up to the player how to steer that. Do you become friends with him? Do you just hate his guts literally to the end of the game? Because you can do that or sort of, go down the middle in between. And this actually drastically influences not only the game's ending, but yeah, quite a number of side quests and moments with V and even V's friends and other major NPCs. So yeah, love him or hate him, Johnny's a big part of the game. But I think Keanu Reeves killed the performance. Maybe the wrong choice of words. He he did a really good
He
performance.
did very well.
Yeah, great voice acting, great motion capture. Yeah, just fun stuff. And even he does even better stuff in Phantom Liberty, which is pretty fun.
Yeah. I think also you were saying earlier about the how it kind of rushes you into that quest line, the introduction of Johnny in your head, and I both agree and disagree. I think it would have been nice to have an option to play more of the build up, and
Mm.
I think that would have made the losses of T and or not T. What was her name? The hacker that you was it T?
T-Bug.
T-Bug. That's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was T. It was T-Bug.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would have made oh my god, and now I'm like derailed. Um
The NPCs you meet early on, you didn't spend enough time with them to really care about them. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And you have this whole backstory of meeting these characters like in the build up.
yeah,
Obviously you have like the people that don't matter as much, like T-Bug and Dexter to an extent.
right,
Dexter Deshawn, the guy who gives you
yeah,
the quest to go what later ends up getting you
yep.
getting that thing in your head. But then obviously Jackie, right? Jackie's the biggest like motivator for your character, kind of getting back on their feet after whatever it is, whatever um, origin you pick. Jackie kind of gets you back there. And we see that, but we don't get to experience that, and then Jackie dies. And having that ability to play it would have been nice to make more of a build-up. But I also feel that the game bloat would have been too long.
Yeah.
If they wanted to keep the build-up between your character and Johnny Silverhand.
You're right.
So I feel like having that as an option for like, people who want more of an extended tutorial, you can even call it that, and have a bit more of a story focused game versus the people that want to just get into the meat and potatoes. Because otherwise, I feel like with all the side quests and with all the exploration and even just the main quest goes on for a good bit, at least from the standards of RPGs that are out nowadays, that would have been a lot.
Yes. There's a pretty hefty main story. I wouldn't say it's too long or too short, but it's pretty chunky. Even if you're like speed running it, it's not. It's like it still takes a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly not long. Like I think Baldur's Gate's main quest is way longer.
Oh yeah. It's not long. But
it's not short.
No,
it's not short.
Yeah.
And I think the way it was released, it's in a very good middle ground. You toss in the side quests, it adds a good bit of length to it. You toss in Phantom Liberty, there's even more build up to it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think maybe also it was a measured decision because that would have been a lot more writing, a lot more development. But I do agree, it would have been nice to see.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer between I would have liked to seen that content and how do you avoid content bloat, because I do agree with you. If that was like a really extended sequence, that was another 5 or 10 hours of gameplay, it would have been like, God damn, the real game doesn't start till like 20 hours later or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is probably, too much.
And especially also because the story kind of relies on your character not having certain skills at the time of the heist.
Correct.
Because, your character just really, when you think about it, by the end of the game, you're fighting Atom Smasher, right?
Yeah.
So that's you go from a relatively mid-level mercenary to fighting the strongest mercenary that we know of in the Cyberpunk universe.
Yeah, if you need you want to see what he can do, just watch Edge Runners. You'll be like, holy shit. Oh my God.
Like he is like in lore even, he's basically a super soldier. Like, started out in the armed forces, basically had every part of his body like replaced. I'm pretty sure
replaced or something.
Yeah, there's only like a little bit of a brain left in him, and like maybe some skin around his skull, and all of the rest of him is machinery at this point. And he like has no emotions anymore. So anything Arasaka or whoever happens to be in charge of him tells him to do, he will do it. He will screw people up, and you fight him. That's the final boss.
You get a real sense of that. Again, some spoilers for Edge Runners here. If you're just getting into Cyberpunk, I would almost say watch Edge Runners first, even if you don't like anime. I've recommended it to all my otherwise anime hating friends, and they're like, "Holy shit, this show's amazing!" And because it is set 1 year before Cyberpunk 2077, and just gives you a good sense of the world. But yeah, when you see David the whole show using the Sandy, and it's so effective and so amazing and so cool, and Atom Smasher's like, "Oh, you have one of those? What a trivial implant." It's just like LOL.
I mean, and Arasaka put so much money into him as well. So like, not only is he incredibly skilled to begin with, but then they gave him basically the best tech and weapons that anyone could ask for.
Yeah. And the endings of the game, this is more hardcore spoiler territory. There actually is a lot of endings to the game. Including, if you want to, I believe, not even fighting Atom Smasher at all, depending on what you do. I think most people end up there, but I believe there's ways you do not, depending on your choices and stuff. So Yeah, kind of like what happens to your V or what do you want to try and happen? There's all kinds of endings, like letting Johnny take over your body, or fighting it, or heck, I mean, it's dark. You can even commit suicide, which is probably the most tragic ending. Because no matter what you do in the credits, you get all these like calls and message logs from all the major NPCs um, that you had any sort of like friendship or relationship or whatever with romance, and some of them are funny or interesting or neutral, and some of them are just like they'll rip your heart out listening to them, kind of depending on the ending you picked. Um,
There
yeah,
are some endings that are just tragic.
yeah. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. I think I don't know. There's 10. There's 15. There's quite a lot of endings, and they're all relatively distinct. Some of them are varying degrees of hopeful, or maybe, or yeah, just straight up tragic. Phantom Liberty. Will kind of be here too long if we try to review all of that. But suffice to say, it adds in a really cool new area to the game called Dogtown. I'm bringing this up because it adds a brand new ending to the game, which is wholly distinct from the others.
Which, in my opinion, is the most depressing ending. I hated that
It
ending.
is, but it's some of the like best performance work between V and Johnny of either like male or female V.
Oh yeah.
Like there's this 5-minute clip in a helicopter. It's just, oh my god, it's so tip top. Well, specifically if you become friends with Johnny.
Well, when I say I hated that ending, um, I meant I hated it in that it like broke me.
Yeah,
The
no, I
ending was
agree.
very well done, but oh my
Yeah,
god, I do not ever want to play that ending again because it was
no.
just so
Yeah.
depressing.
There's that, and then it hits you with like the Pan Am and Judy stuff. You get it whammied again, and then like you talk to Vic and get triple whammied, and you just it
Yeah.
keep on coming. It just keeps hurting you. But that's what's like I said. That's what I really appreciate about the game. It's not afraid to not pull punches and hit the player with like serious consequences for your choices, or maybe some unexpected twists and turns or outcomes, and whether that, I mean, we're talking about the ending here, but even you can go back to some of the side quests. Like there's some really incredible ones. Like at one point you meet this cop, the River Ward guy. He has a pretty harrowing side quest involving like kid trafficking, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Like some really
Oh
dark
god.
shit that can have some really bad outcomes or some less bad outcomes. There's this other quest, this whole crazy guy who's trying to like pretend he's Jesus, and it's really fascinating to just follow that quest line and its outcome, which is also pretty brutal in first person. Oh my god. Um, there's just a lot of pretty heavy hitting quests. The Perez storyline, extremely fascinating, kind of psychological horror, like pretty dark if you follow
Yeah.
it up anyway. It's just there's a lot of really really good stuff, and just good writing, good acting, good voice work, good scripts. And again, the player actions and dialogue choices, or your actions of do you save people, do you rescue people, do you kill them, are you quick enough to get to XYZ place and do this thing or whatever, is really interesting outcomes on the game, and that's ultimately the endings. So, um, in my opinion, if you like you're confident about wanting Cyberpunk, just also buy Phantom Liberty, because the expansion's best when you basically mix and match it with the core game, rather than like do 90% of the core game, then like do all of the expansion all at once, which is kind of what happened to me. It's not that it wasn't good, but I think it's better if you sort of weave it in and out of the expansion and the core game. Personally, it's like more natural. And some of the quests take you out of Dogtown, out into the real, back into regular Night City, but most of them take place within. Also, part of the issue is the content of Phantom Liberty is like beat for beat much higher quality than the core game. Like even the random side gigs are like really fascinating and interesting and more extensive and have like 3 to 4 different outcomes, which isn't really the case in the core game, with rare exceptions. So it can be like occasionally jarring if you just go play like several hours of Phantom Liberty only like content and then go back to the regular game. It's not like shocking or something, but like you do notice a bit of difference. So that's just my 2 cents, my impressions. But Phantom Liberty's tip top. Idris Elba's cool, but I'm Team Songbird myself. So
Same every time.
Gotta get her to the moon, baby. Gotta get her to the moon. That's what I say. I won't say any more than that. Yeah. Maybe I forget where she went anyway. Yeah, really good. Again, great voice work, acting, intriguing storylines. It's more like spy thrillery and intrigue and all this stuff. Some of it's cliche, sure, but it's well done cliche, so I don't mind.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think even the most cliche stuff it fits.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not there's not a lot of fan service for the sake of fan service.
Correct, Amundo.
Even like having Keanu Reeves there as Johnny Silverhand, like they make him fit. Having Idris Elba in there, they make him fit. It's not jarring and out of place.
Yes, correct. Well done. Yeah, but that's pretty much Cyberpunk. We love it. 10 out of 10, in my opinion. There's a lot, we're going to not talk too much longer here, but so we already know Cyberpunk 2 is coming. It was Project Orion for a year or two, and then it was officially announced. Cyberpunk 2, they made a new studio. I think it was like the lead quest dev of the core game is now like the lead dev or maybe co-dev of Cyberpunk 2. He's a cool guy. I like him a lot. I've seen him a lot on stream and stuff. Do you have like any kind of wish list or like any notable changes or additions you would like to see in a Cyberpunk 2 game?
I guess as far as gameplay goes, they made driving a lot better. It used to be trash.
Yeah.
They fixed it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess they could fix a little more, maybe.
Yeah.
More character options would be nice. Kind of more backstories, more ways that affects your game.
Yeah, there's a middle ground, what we talked about, like giving you a huge early game backstory option thing and like having it trimmed super short and part of it being a cutscene and part of it kind of never mattering again. And there's some sort of middle ground there where they could make it more substantial and be like, oh, my early game choices had a much more interesting like impact and outcome on the game. Yeah.
I think even as simple as like having certain items or maybe a different starting area or different, a different vehicle, etc.
Yeah.
And some of that does come back. Like I think during the Street Kid start, like you can get that car back later on that you lost during, or that got totaled at the very start. Like you can get it repaired or something.
Right.
But having a bit more of integration, and then I guess as far as combat goes, I really felt that they had already nailed the balance. So if anything, maybe not like, I wouldn't want to see a rework of the system, but if they could find a way to add more paths or add more options, like I really don't know where they would go with that, but I'm certain that someone is thinking about it and trying to improve on it. But
yeah, for me it's the melee combat. It was also super trash up front, and they patched it a lot to be better, but it's still a little clunky, honestly, and obviously doesn't hold up to an actual melee combat game like Vermintide or Darktide or something. The shooting I think is really good, really fun, smooth, satisfying, tons of options. Net running also pretty fantastic. For me, it's just the melee combat. It's fun, but it is limited. And if they could expand on that with, whether it's better animations, more of a path, or I mean, heck, we see in Edge Runners, guys have like kung fu modules,
That's
like,
true.
Doing like cool shit. So it's like, I'm not asking them to turn this into Oni or something where you run around and like learn dozens of martial arts moves and beat people up and still have guns. But, if they could at least flesh out like the melee weapon stuff a bit more, it's decent, but it's below all the gunplay and the net running and everything else. So it's like in third place or something. I
didn't think about that because I mostly just use Mantis Blades or the Monowire.
Right. Which are amazing. They are amazing.
Which are great. Really, but yeah, you're right. I guess I never really noticed like even the melee enemies are never really a threat. They're
No.
mostly
Yeah.
like it's like at that point you have to wonder like why even bother like trying to charge someone with a bat? Like you're just throwing your life away at that point.
Yeah. Because
So
most of
yeah,
them are the mooks. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess
That would like to see that. Yeah.
making the idea of someone like really enhanced with cyberware to the point that melee, like they would want to do melee. Like we did see that a bit. Like there are a couple characters here and there that kind of like blink forward, but
Yeah.
then they get locked into an animation
Yeah, it's a
that
bit
you can just back away from.
clunky. It's a bit clunky. Mostly it's like the animal gangs and stuff. They're like
Yeah,
roided up melee dudes. And occasionally you'll find someone who has a Sandy, and if you use your Sandy, they use theirs, and it's cool. So I'd like to see that sprinkled more. Yeah, not just for your character, but also the enemies. There used to be some mods where you could do that. You could add like more mini bosses and like tougher dudes and more enemy net runners. So like some just general variety. I mean, they've already shown off, for example, in the Witcher 4 demo with Ciri, like crazy crowds and cool world stuff. Like those are some of the first mods I installed in the game is like more population density, more traffic.
yeah,
I just wanted the world to be like more vibrant. They're already going to do that, I'm sure. But yeah, spiffing up the combat variety on the melee end would be nice. They do a great job on the guns, as we've discussed. They could sprinkle in more enemy net runners, and they don't. I think they're there really rarely in the core game. They show up more, a little more in Phantom Liberty, which is nice. Quite a bit
and
more, actually.
and when they do show up in the base game, they're never really that much of a threat.
Yeah,
Like more often than not, they just kind of annoy you.
yeah. Yeah, I used to have a mod installed that let them have all the same hacks as you, like all of them. So suddenly, like, you're getting blinded, your gun's getting disabled, you're getting set on fire.
Yeah,
There's even a one that, like, insta-kills you in 20 seconds or whatever if you don't find them and kill them. You know, it's like the suicide one, I think. It just...
yeah,
So that was a really fun mod, but again, it's a mod. Like, I think that kind of stuff should be in the core game. So some stuff like that would, yeah, make the combat it would add that challenge we talked about earlier where I felt like maybe it didn't really exist. It would make the game like more punishing is the wrong word, but like challenging. And yeah, it would just for maybe the character builds as well. I'm sure, they could come up with cool new gun types or new quick hacks, or I don't know, maybe they had dual wielding or something, or to the guns. They could do something to spice up the gunplay.
hmm
Probably my biggest hope for the game is, and this is a double-edged sword potentially, or maybe it ruins the game even, honestly, is that they add co-op. And the reason I say that co-op specifically, not PvP, is mostly after watching Edge Runners, I'm like, damn, I want to hang out in Cyberpunk with some buddies.
Oh yeah, I
you
agree.
know,
That would be very cool. But I think it's very important to note as well that a lot of these changes now, especially now that they've been patching the game and fixing so much of the glaring issues that were there at the start, a lot of it is just like quality of life or very minor improvements, or even if it is a major improvement, it's a major improvement restricted to one area.
yeah,
I think the biggest thing they need to nail is getting it all done at release. That's the biggest
yeah,
thing. Like
yeah,
Cyberpunk 2077 is now in a very good spot, but it took them like months to get to a good spot and years to get to where they are now.
correct.
I think I don't know if it was pressure. Like I still don't know what the official explanation is for like why it was released in the state that it was in.
It's this weird thing with investors and promised deadlines and demands, and they just kind of were forced to release it. It was like their own mismanagement, but it ended up with they were forced to release it whether they kind of wanted to or not, and they later
Yeah.
apologized, and their own investors like sued them for false advertising. It was this whole thing. Now they've recovered from all of that. They're in the good graces of, the public and then the press and the corpse and whatever the corpos.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they basically just bungled it. Not out of any malice or whatever. It was just mismanaged, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I know it wasn't malice. They have a very passionate team, and you can tell that.
Yeah,
but they really need to try to do that upfront.
Yeah, they do. They do. I think they're aware of it, and fortunately, even despite the game's issues, it was up front. It was massively successful. It had over 10 million pre-orders. 10 million before the game even launched.
Yeah.
And None, sure, some people refunded, but not a lot. So the game was already like successful before it even launched as like sort of a dumpster fire, and then it had more of a reputational hit. And today, the game plus Phantom Liberty has sold like almost 40 million copies. Like they're wildly successful, but they understand that they messed up because they've been on record for saying this. Like they said, you guys gave us another chance, so that's why we were able to do it. And funny enough, it was like Edge Runners that gave the game a real shot in the arm again. And suddenly everyone was like, holy shit, Cyberpunk's cool AF. And I think their player count actually exceeded launch after Edge Runners came out.
Mm-hmm.
Like the game became even more popular than like at its peak. So, and then they were like, holy shit. And then they added all this cool like Edge Runner stuff into the game as well. Various weapons, items, locations, references, quest line or two. So that was all really cool as well. So they capitalized on, the hype correctly. And, then came back with a huge 2.0 update, which like massively fixed the game and added in tons of amazing stuff, which is now obviously just default. So I think they know it, and they haven't even given any kind of timeline for Cyberpunk 2. I'm the one who's saying maybe 2030. It could even be longer. It might not even be out till 31 or 32 for all I know. But it's safe to say one of the other things I think the problem with the game is CD Projekt, the only games they had made were the Witcher games, and they were all third-person, medieval RPGs, essentially. And also based on a book series, right? Geralt was also a very pre-established character with, a lot of, like, the world and characters were written for them. They just had to build off that. Cyberpunk, yes, the RPG exists, as we discussed, Cyberpunk Red, how you got into it way back, but they had to come up with everything. And they also had to transition from making third-person medieval RPG game to first-person shooter, whatever, sci-fi future game. So it was a huge change for the team. And I think that factored into its like crazy long development time and a lot of their stumbles up front and all this stuff. But I mean, they made an entirely new team in studio, which is moved from Poland to Boston in the US here. Just to make Cyberpunk 2. So they have like an enormous like dedicated branch, and it includes a bunch of the like veteran devs from the Cyberpunk game and probably some of the Witcher games at this point. So I'm hopeful they'll do it. I think, they know they can't afford to do that again, or like no one will ever trust them again. So I think they'll do it. And as far as I know, they're not under any pressure or this or that, and they haven't announced any deadlines. They're just like, we're making the game. That's it. That's all they said.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they have those systems in place now is going to make a lot of difference.
Yeah, it should. I wouldn't expect it to be we're not going to be playing V again. Johnny Silverhand's not going to be in the game. At least I doubt it. Maybe there'll be a cameo or a reference or a photo or a news article or whatever the heck, sometimes they do in these games. I ultimately think it'll be a brand new adventure with, we can expect obviously lots of cyberpunkiness, but I presume all brand new characters for the most part. And, I don't even know if it's set in Night City. It might even be in somewhere else for all I know, but we'll have to see. It's a long ways out. We're getting The Witcher 4 well before that.
Yes. And I am happy for it.
Yeah. I'm due for a return to some Witcher goodness. We've been talking a while though. We can wrap it up. I just wanted to do a quick shout out to some of the more adjacent Cyberpunk media. There's a pretty good book called No Coincidence. It's not amazing, but it's pretty fun. And if you like audiobooks, the Audible version is voiced by Jeremy Lay, who does Female V, and she does a really good job of narrating the audiobook. I bought the book physically, but also the audiobook because I liked it so much. Pretty good story, a little convoluted, so it's not like a absolute must-read book, but if you like Cyberpunk, it's a pretty good read. There's a bunch of pretty fun comics, like short anthology sort of things by Dark Horse Comics in the US at least. My favorite one is the Trauma Team one. Really, really good. Really fascinating, like psychologically. You can just find them online if you Google like Cyberpunk Trauma Team, Dark Horse, or whatever. And they're in the process of doing a prequel to Edge Runners called Edge Runners Madness with Rebecca Piloff and I think, oh my God, what's her name? The second Edge Runner in the team, the sort of villainous one. Not Lucy.
Oh.
Not T-Bone.
Not Lucy. Yeah.
Not Lucy. The other one. Whatever her name is, she's in there too. Yeah, but it's really fun because of course Rebecca's Bay. So yeah,
I'm
very
still more of a Lucy fan. Oh, and it's Kiwi. It's Kiwi. That's what it
Kiwi.
was.
Yes,
Yep.
she's in there too. I mean, I am for different reasons. I'm a Lucy fan, and for different reasons, I'm a Rebecca fan. So it's not like black and white. Um, but anyway,
Well, nothing is in Night City.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Good place to stand on. But yeah, my point is, yeah, there's just lots of fun media to poke around at. Some of it you can find online. Some of it you may have to buy, whatever. But yeah, it's out there. And yeah, go watch Edge Runners if you haven't. Mandatory viewing, in my opinion. If you're going to bother playing all of Cyberpunk 2077, you got to watch Edge Runners.
Indeed.
And Edge Runners 2 is coming out, and I don't know if this makes me happy or sad, but the like producer or whatever guy said in a little like stream, he said their goal is to hurt all of us even more than Edge Runners did.
That'll be a feat.
Yeah, so I was like, oh no. I was like, oh yes, but also oh no. Yeah, emotional damage. I guess we'll see. But yeah, Cyberpunk's a good time. It's a great game. It's out on Mac. It runs well on Mac. It runs well on PC. It's, I think, out on Switch. It's on GeForce Now. It's on pretty much every gaming tech device possible, except for like iPhones or something, and I guess maybe iPads. But the rumor having it, they might even do that too. So, yeah, that's Cyberpunk. Lily and I love it. Check it out. So thanks for taking the time, Lily, to gush about Cyberpunk and add in your backstory and your observations and your experiences. It was a lot of fun. It was very valuable. Appreciate it a lot. And
of course, happy to be here as always.
Yeah, it was interesting. I liked it when you mentioned like the geology stuff. Like, oh, I'd married a geologist. I was thinking about rocks, and even these rock things were accurate. It's like, oh, this is fantastic. Yeah,
it's the little things in life.
Yeah, little things in life. And the soundtrack. That'll stick with you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's what I had to ask you. Do you have, if you can't pick a favorite song, if you can, do, but if you can't, then maybe like a radio station, if you remember it. Like Body Heat Radio is like where a lot of the popular songs are, for example.
I mean, would it be unfair to pick the song from Edge Runners that makes everyone cry?
No, because
I have that on my Spotify playlist now.
Yeah. Really want to stay at your house. I have like 10.
I
have like 10 variants of that. I have, yeah. I of course have the original, which is still the best. But then there's like metal rock covers by dudes, which are shockingly weirdly good, and other like different vocal versions by different female YouTubers. And anyway, I have a bunch of. I have like so many variants of that song.
Though honestly, and again, it might be cliche. But I don't know if it was a song that was in the trailer or what, but Never Fade Away, the cover of it. Where there's like a female singer and not Silverhand. That was done really well. I love that song.
That was done really well. Yeah, I have a couple other like less emotional favorites, and it's more like I'm in the middle of a firefight. Probably.
Oh I mean, and the
like, Chipping In or Friday Night Firefight or I think Pon Shit, which is really weird. Like,
yep, that was a good one. And most of these are from Body Heat Radio, that radio station.
A lot of them are.
I guess that would be my pick.
Yeah, there's some other good ones.
By virtue of it having them.
Yeah. Phantom Liberty adds an entire new station. I think 2 stations, actually. So there's quite a few new songs from Phantom Liberty, too. Including, I think, 2 by Idris Elba, where he's like rapping. It's kind of interesting. One of them's pretty good. One of them's kind of whatever. But yeah, a lot of great music. So yeah, good deal. No, it's not cliche. Like, the favorites are the favorites, for good reason. There's another good one. I think it's literally just called Night City. And it's just really interesting, like, female vocals. Basically, sort of, again, the what is Night City and how it affects you and stuff like that. Yeah, that's another one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's even more that I could pick, but I don't remember the
those are like
now.
top 5 or whatever off the top of my head. I do have like a more extensive list that I have to go find it, but
no.
Okay. Well, Thanks for being here, Lily. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will catch you guys next time. Take care.
Take care.